The movie started at 10:12 a.m. It ended at 12:27. Yes, I noted the time. Because when you sit through the Kerala story too, you begin measuring your life in minutes lost and ideological decibels endured. Yes, we took one for the team. Now my first question, why is it called Kerala Story 2? Because of the 3 case studies, one is set in Kerala, one in Gwalior, which is in Madhya Pradesh, and one in Jodhpur, which is in Rajasthan. The movie opens with the subtlety of a hammer to the skull. A bald woman hangs in Kochi. In Jodhpur, a dog discovers a woman's body. We are told the movie is inspired by true facts. Then we meet the trio. A free-spirited Malayali woman from Kochi, a Dalit woman who is a javelin thrower, and a 16-year-old dancer and rising social media star from Jodhpur. 3 states, 3 daughters, one underlying thesis. This is what happens when fathers are progressive. Because let's be clear, the only villain here isn't just the Muslim men and women with ominous background music playing during namaz scenes. The other antagonist is the Hindu father who is modern, dotes on his daughter and gives her too much freedom. Making Kerala Story 2 must have been pretty simple. The director seems to have worked off 2 separate lists. Now I'll come back to those lists, but before that let me remind you, it's the start of a new month. The perfect time to subscribe to the New Spirit. And if a monthly subscription feels like too much, then just think of it this way. I've saved you from watching this movie, so consider this your ticket price. So scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description and become a subscriber, or you can contribute to this show. Let me explain. All the links are in the comment box. So what were the 2 lists that Kerala Story 2 director Kamakya Singh probably carried with him? List 1. What to justify. WhatsApp University, Islamophobia, bulldozer justice, the idea that Hindus are permanent victims in India. Now to list 2. What to belittle. Secularism, progressive parenting, Hindu parents who don't indoctrinate their children, liberalism, middle-class Hindus who reject right-wing fanaticism, Indian laws that allow consenting adults to convert to another religion, and the biggest target, Kerala. There is no simple reason this film needed to be called Kerala Story 2. In fact, the so-called Kerala case study is the one where a woman is force-fed beef. And the makers can't even claim it is inspired by a true story there. There's something deeply sinister about choosing a state where many Hindus eat all kinds of meat and then locating a coercive beef-feeding story there. Now, the next question before the director would have been, how do we bring these 2 lists together? Simple. Romance. The romances begin innocently, as they must in all morality tales about civilizational collapse. Now, in Jodhpur, a girl dances. A man films her appreciatively. He proposes, he critiques her religion as outdated goddess worship. He promises wealth through sexy reels. The girl, who's an influencer, tells her parents, "Don't touch my phone, it's my privacy, this is my career." Now remember, she's 16 years old. Then in Kochi, a married man assures his girlfriend he will divorce his wife and that he does not believe in all that conversion stuff. Then in Agra, a Muslim man pretends to be a Hindu and promises to stand by the woman who wants to represent India in javelin throw. Then comes the grand reveal. Every single Muslim male character is part of a coordinated conspiracy. We see offices with banners saying Ghazwa-e-Hind 2047, maps, strategy talk, and lines delivered with a straight face. We will not leave a single unmarried Hindu girl. By 2047, there will be Sharia law in India. We are changing the demography of Europe. There are rate cuts. 6 lakhs for a Dalit woman, 12 lakhs for a Brahmin. It feels like the most unhinged WhatsApp forward that has been turned into a movie. Wait, it was a WhatsApp forward. This list, according to Alt News, first started doing the rounds in 2010. Some news channels even reported on it, calling it exclusive in 2016. Owing to inflation, I guess, the movie makers have increased the rates now. Then comes the violence. Because when you lack script, storyline, and creativity, you compensate with noise and brutality. Women are beaten, raped, locked up, force-fed beef, tied up, put up for prostitution, and even killed. Muslim women are not bystanders in this universe. They are enthusiastic accomplices. They smile at torture. They block escape routes in coordinated burqa formations. There are no conflicted relatives, no dissenters, no vigilant neighbors. Just seamless, choreographed cruelty. In Jodhpur, Divya marries Rashid and is relocated to a household that appears to be the headquarters of all villains. The mother-in-law wastes no time. Make sure that you put at least 5 or 6 children in her belly, with the subtlety of a bulldozer. In the Agra story, the Muslim man's mother, who's also a pimp by the way, tells her son that there is a great demand for Hindu women in their muhalla. Bottom line, the entire Muslim community wants to subject Hindu women to all forms of violence. Even prayer scenes come with ominous background scores in case you accidentally interpret namaz as devotion rather than an act of revenge that they want you to think it is. Meanwhile, Hindu parents flail helplessly. They approach the police, lawyers, they produce documents proving their daughter is a minor, but the response? The law, meaning the constitutional right to convert, is on their side. Apparently, democracy is also in on the conspiracy. Attempts to mobilize other Hindus fail at first. Hindus have been divided for 1,000 years. Translation: unity is overdue, unite against Muslims. In this movie, symbolism is not shy. A lone Hindu girl framed against a cluster of burqa-clad women. A Hindu father physically restrained by caricatured Muslim men. All this in a police station. What makes the sequel even more unsettling than the first one is that many may find it slightly better made. The background score is stronger. The sound design is sharper. The rage is better packaged. In both the films, the blame shifts quietly and then loudly to Hindu families themselves. The girls fall into traps because they were not taught faith strongly enough, because their fathers were too liberal, because their homes were too disconnected from tradition. But the movie truly gets dangerous in the end, as the bulldozer makes its heroic entry. The Muslim perpetrators are brutally beaten up in police stations. Hindu society wakes up, the film declares. Organize, consolidate, stop being secular. The film does not offer a single Muslim character with hesitation, complexity, or even humanity. The movie does not distinguish between crime and community. It does not acknowledge that interfaith marriages exist without tragic consequences. Instead, it constructs a world where every Muslim, man, woman, elderly, everyone is a cog in a sinister machine targeting ambitious, outspoken Hindu girls and the fathers who dare to trust them. The film claims inspiration from real events. Yes, real crimes do happen. Real tragedies do occur. But here, incidents are woven into an omnipresent conspiracy where suspicion is framed as the only rational response.